thing. Just a real quick, again, be sure and keep your phones or devices on mute. Here is our agenda for today. I want to say welcome. My name is Robin Freeman with the University of Arkansas Currents. It is my pleasure to be joining you today with our Leadership Academy 2.0, our virtual Leadership Academy. Excited to have you all participating. Looking forward to a great discussion. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Madan Kundu, who's going to give us a few words of welcome. And I think also we'll have a few words of welcome from Felipe, who is he on the line this afternoon? Felipe, are you there? Maybe you'll join us in a few, but he did say earlier you want to have some words of welcome after Dr. Kundu. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Kundu.
Thank you, Robin. Welcome to our Leadership Academy 2, which is virtual, of course. Last year, we had a wonderful experience. The Leadership Academy in New Orleans, about 90 people participated, and we had a lot of interaction with all of the speakers. All the speakers were excellent and talking about all relevant area that we need to collaborate with the state VA agencies and community rehab programs and community business organization. It was so dynamic that we really enjoyed very much. And at the end of the workshop, we had evaluation, and all the participants overwhelmingly wanted another academy right away. So I said, well, that sounds good. Of course, Robin did a good job making a survey. I mean, actually what they want, what are the topics, and etc. And then COVID-19 came into the picture. So we still decided to have the academy virtually. So that's where we are now. And of course, this focus of this academy is on sustainability. So government project comes in and goes, but this project made a significant difference, for which it was supposed to be, that we see that there is a strong collaborations between the community rehabilitation programs, community business organization, and state VA agencies. In fact, yesterday, we made a presentation on outcome at the National Council on Rehabilitation annual conference. That our commissioner, he was not able to join yesterday, so they all of a sudden asked us to make a presentation, and we did. And it showed that the outcome really increased all the way through 2018. It's a very remarkable outcome, but then some of the intervening factors that caused the problem, order of selections and COVID-19, so we could not maintain that upswing move, all the activities. But still, it is quite a significant achievement. So I hope that this workshop will give you more knowledge and skills and competency, how we can keep this momentum going, the collaboration with the state VA agency, community business organization, and community rehab programs. So I would like to thank John Connolly and his staff, and Robin Freeman and her staff at the UA Currents, and our staff at Southern University. So once again, I welcome you to the Virtual Academy. Please pay attention all what the speakers has to say, and then utilize this for our future sustainability of the progress that we have made. And I'm pleased to see that Joe Javier and other people all join. Thank you, Joe, for your attendance. That shows that you are interested and you're committed to this work, and also all others. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kundu. We do have Felipe Lully on the line, I believe. If he wanted our RSA project officer for Project E3, you now have the floor. If you also want to offer some words of welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Robin, and thank you, Madan. Also, I really want to thank everyone most warmly and for participating in this, and thank you for participating in this. But above all, I want to thank each one of you for your work in the last years, being very creative in finding
Felipe,
ways to.
Felipe, we have a little bit of feedback on your line.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. Yeah, let me see what I can do. I don't know what I can do about it. But anyways, without further ado, I just want to thank everyone for your work in the past, and to encourage you to take advantage of this great opportunity to develop ways to sustain all the progress that you've achieved into the future, and both within within the VR agency and within the community-based organizations. I will be following this conference in the next few days, and a very fruitful time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Felipe. And again, as a reminder to our participants, please keep your lines on mute when you're not speaking, and use the chat function to share your comments and questions. And also, while we're getting started with our first presentation that John Conley will introduce, we ask that you put your name and location in our chat box. At this time, I turn it over to John Conley with CSAVR.
Well, thank you, Robin. I appreciate that. I'm John Conley. I'm with the Council of State Administrators of Vocational Rehabilitation, and we've been happy to be a partner in Project E3. We appreciate the leadership that has been provided by Dr. Kundu and the Southern staff, and also the work of all the partners and working with you in the communities. Certainly Robin Freeman and her staff at UA Currents for not only putting on this academy, but also Leadership Academy 1.0. So we've all been challenged. In March, our world changed probably forever. We had to think of new ways to do business. We had to think of new ways to maintain family relationships, friendships with our friends, and business relationships. And today, for the first session, the title was Meeting the Challenges of Going Virtual. And as you consider sustainability and continuing the great work that you've done in your partnerships, in your communities, we think that working and living and doing business in a virtual state is probably here to stay. So we're very pleased this afternoon to have three great presenters from three state VR agencies, all of whom have targeted communities in their states and have been involved in the project and supported the project and your work along the way. So this afternoon, our presenters are going to be, and I'll ask them, maybe they could just wave from their box, Cynthia Spate, who is the director of the North Carolina Division of Services for the Blind, Dale Batten, who is the deputy commissioner for the Division of Rehabilitation Services in the Virginia Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services, and Joe Xavier, who's the director of the California Department of Rehabilitation. So we have a series of 4 questions, and how we're going to proceed is that going to ask each panel member to take the lead on one of the questions, and then for the other panel members, if they have additional thoughts, ideas that they want to share, to then add those. Certainly be looking at the chat box for your feedback and questions, and we should have time at the end to address questions and feedback. So as we're going through the presentation, please keep that in mind and please enter those in the chat box. So with that, if the panel is ready, we'll move to the first question. And the first question is for Cynthia Spade from North Carolina Blind, and it is, during the pandemic, you and your staff have had to implement new ways of doing business and new practices. So what have you learned in terms of effectively delivering services virtually to your customers.
Thank you, John. Hello, everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a few of our thoughts and what's been happening here in North Carolina with you. Let me begin by explaining to you all that as an agency that provides services for individuals who are blind, visually impaired, and deafblind, our quote unquote normal way of doing business is to be out in the community where they are. Our staff have always historically operated itinerantly in that we don't typically see pre-COVID consumers in our offices. We go out into the communities, in their homes, their workplaces, schools, to meet with them and to help them develop their plans of their vocational goals and plans, and coordinating and implementing the activities around it. We also have a residential facility, and is our career and training center, where we were accustomed to consumers coming to us and spending time with us here. So needless to say, mid-March threw us for a monkey wrench. We were not equipped, nor were we prepared to move to virtual delivery of our services. I have to say, though, that I'm extremely proud of our staff and our team, because we don't lie down, we stand up and get at it. And we have figured out ways, and are still figuring out ways, to deliver effective services remotely. So some of the things we've learned, and one of the most important things we learned is, up until the pandemic, we worked on the philosophy that, as I said, we did itinerant work. Staff were in the office a few days a week, and we were not giving routinely and regularly the opportunity for our staff to telework and to work remotely. And since this has happened, we see one of the silver linings is that it has demonstrated to us that we do have the capacity of supporting staff to work remotely, and that they can do so effectively and help meet the needs of consumers. So I think that one of the greatest benefits, if you will, find the silver linings in this, is just that we've learned we have other ways of doing business. And as such, by doing business this way, we've also found that for some of our targeted communities and more rural communities, one, it's been easier to allow and provide them a broader range of services because it's virtual. They don't have to come to our career and training center. They don't have to come and meet counselors out in the field. But it also poses challenges in that the things that we've learned is that we must first assess just where we are as staff. You know, are we equipped? Do we know how to use the equipment? Do we have all of the internet services that we need? And even more so, we've learned how critical it is to assess those needs for those we serve. And in assessing the needs of those we serve, then we're charged with trying to meet those needs. And we certainly have recognized that we have gaps. And so we've made some changes, but we recognize we need to continue to make changes in our policies, procedures, and resources so that we're better able to meet those needs for those who are not equipped, don't have internet services, don't have the skill set to work effectively and efficiently in this manner. We find that it's important, another lesson that we've learned that we will continue to operate on is making sure that we're not, that we're taking the time to learn from our consumers what platforms work best for you in terms of video conferencing and communicating and learning remotely, so that one, we can ensure to the best of our ability they have access to it, know how to use it, and as do we. We want to also make sure that our communications, is more important than ever that our communications are clear. And so we're being patient. We've learned the importance of being patient and the importance of making sure that we are communicating effectively and seeking feedback continuously from the consumers in regards to that. You know, are you receiving what I'm saying clearly? Are you able to get this information? Do you have questions? Do you have understanding of it? And we do that when we're on the virtual platforms through chat. We do it verbally by any means necessary, because it's so critical to ensure that we are being effective in what we're trying to convey and deliver and receive from them. Another thing that we've learned is that by virtue of working virtually, as I said to you before COVID, we were itinerant, which means that North Carolina has 100 counties, and we have not a very large staff. And we operate out of 7 district offices. So needless to say, our staff were spending a lot of what I call windshield time. They were behind the wheel a lot, driving from place to place. Well, one of the things that we found is in this environment, we're able to spend more time working directly with the consumers and listening to the consumers and supporting consumers, because we're not spending that time on the road. And we're also able to expand our bandwidth in terms of building our network, because again, by working virtually, you know, the world is our pearl, our oyster. We can reach out to anybody and build those relationships and those collaborations. So it really has facilitated great opportunities for collaboration and networking and building.
John, Cynthia is muted, or
I think her connection froze.
yes.
Are you back, Cynthia? I think your connection froze.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know exactly where I stopped.
You were talking about allowing more time for working with consumers, less windshield time,
Okay.
and the
Okay.
benefits of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was just explaining in that's been a silver lining, because by working virtually, we have greater flexibility and more time to spend working directly with consumers and those within our network. It still has presented challenges for us. I was explaining, we still haven't figured it all out. We're still working on it. We're still learning. We're still building our resources and helping consumers build our resources. So we're North Carolina Services for the Blind, we aren't there yet. You know, we have 100 counties. We serve all 100 counties, and we have a small staff, relatively small staff. And so those staff basically work out of 7 district offices. And so we have some very rural, you know, areas of the state that their resources are limited, including, you know, Wi-Fi and internet access. We have, like I said, policies and procedures in place that limit when we can purchase needed technologies for consumers to be able to fully participate in our programs. Our staff don't all have state issued telephones. So we're still figuring out how to enable them to communicate telephonically without utilizing their own personal phones, and how to, you know, protect their personal cell phone numbers. And we all know we don't answer some numbers that we don't recognize, so nor do our consumers. And that presents some barriers. So we're still working on some things. And we also recognize that the social face-to-face aspects of building a working relationship and building partnerships is missing in this virtual world. And we recognize that there's still very much value in that.
So thanks, Cynthia. I want to see if Dale and or Joe have anything they'd like to add again in response to this question.
This is Joe. John, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Joe.
So always want to make sure you have a mic check because you could be on mute. But first of all, just thank you to everyone. It's great to be part of this panel. And I just want to give a shout out to our California team that has been working on the Targeted Communities Project. And Cynthia did an excellent job of hitting so many of the topics. I just want to emphasize a couple of key points. When we talk about this virtual, the way of doing business virtually, I think we really have to take a hard look at the digital divide and look at it, I would say, from 4 lenses primarily. One is we have to recognize the lack of internet access is a major barrier, and particularly to the targeted populations in certain circumstances. The second part of that is, do they have the devices to do that kind of business? And the third part, of course, is where's the skill set to effectively use both of those? But I think there's a fourth one that we all have to really be thinking about. For some time, in some places across the country, including here in California, we have thought of providing technology more as a privilege rather than a necessity. And I think if COVID-19 has demonstrated anything, it is that having access to the technology and to the systems I just described is paramount. So I think we have to shift our thinking from, does this person need technology, to this person really does need technology to be effective in getting services, but beyond getting the services. The other thing that I would highlight is that while COVID-19 accelerated so many things, there remain some things that are tried and true, individualized to the person, culturally competent. So we cannot escape those things because we moved into this virtual environment, this virtual platform. And then the third thought that I would share with you is that as leaders, all of us have a responsibility to create the tension between get it right and get it done. Government was never thought to be very nimble. Our agencies were not thought to be very nimble. And yet under the pressure of COVID-19, we found amazing nimbleness. So the question is, how do we maximize that nimbleness, not just today, but tomorrow and beyond?
Thanks, Joe. Before we move to the next question, I didn't know if there was anything you'd like to add, Dale?
I agree with everything that Joe and Cynthia has said, so I will not repeat any of that. And hello to everyone. So glad to be on this panel with everyone today and Target Communities participants. I would say that for our agency, something that was really learned early on is that, as Cynthia said, communication is the key. And collaboration among all partners was definitely a need that we had to immediately make sure was in place, because everyone stopped meeting face to face and had to start using virtual services. And that was a learning curve for everyone because of the different platforms that some people had and some people were not knowledgeable of. So technology, as Joe said, was very then a necessity for us to be able to perform our duties and for conversations with our clientele. We had in Virginia immediate policy that our agencies and the government could not use Zoom as a platform for meeting our clientele and even collaborating with our partners. So we actually had to get this resolved through our Virginia Information Technology System agency. And then we had requirements of how to use the Zoom platform for confidentiality and HIPAA regulations. So that was a big hurdle that we had to go through in Virginia as part of moving to virtual services. We are doing it okay now, and we have different platforms. And as Joe said, and Cynthia, we have to, as a lesson learned, we had to work with our clients where they were. Those that did not know how to use technology, those that had difficulty with broad bandwidth for being able to use our services. So I agree with everything they said in terms of what lessons have been learned. And I will discuss more about some of the other initiatives that we had to take as we move through the rest of the questions.
Thanks, Dale. Appreciate that. I just want to remind everybody, if you do have questions or feedback, if you'll put that in the group chat room. So our second question, and Dale is going to take the lead on this, is, and all of you kind of referenced this in response to the first question, so maybe ask you to drill down a little further. What changes did your agency make to operate virtually during the pandemic? And what of those changes will become an ongoing part of your business model and why? Dale, you mentioned the change in terms of Zoom and the ability to use Zoom that you didn't have before. So what other kind of changes have you been looking at and thinking about continuing?
Some of the great activities that we've had in place is how to actually, some of our teaching classroom instruction has moved to a virtual environment. Job clubs, our job fairs with businesses have moved to a virtual environment. Our business processing in our agency, where we had to turn in authorizations and payments through our regular paperwork system, mailing, we've changed all of that to now electronic authorizations through our fiscal office for processing. The thing we are working on now because of COVID is virtual signatures. We still do not have a virtual signature on our IPE. We do have it now for our payments of billing, but not on our IPE, so in our application. So we are working through that. We have a process in place, though, through virtual services, how we're handling, as many states are now, the IPE signature, so we can continue to move forward with service delivery while we work on the signature authorization. There are some of the big things that we've gone through. We're training staff on the different platforms of how to do service delivery. We too in Virginia have a comprehensive training center, and we are moving to a Canvas software process for learning in the classroom through those means, because we are reducing how we are now serving clients in our comprehensive center. We also, when we stopped serving clients at the comprehensive center, we actually started virtual services for some of our occupational therapy services and some of our driver's ed training. And those are things that we're going to continue to do. We are actually, even with our targeted communities project, we actually were supposed to have a 2-day statewide training from our E3 project. And when COVID started, we decided we could not do it face-to-face any longer. So we moved to a virtual training. We actually selected 30 what we call influencers of our internal staff. We did not open it up to our external partners. We decided, because we had to go virtual, let's train our own staff on how to perform the activities of target community. And then we want to sustain that by rolling out a last training that will actually give us a flow chart of how we will continue the service delivery in the future of E3 project. When we rolled out the virtual services, we actually developed 6 modules or models of classes that was for 2 days each. And it was for 6 sessions. And the participants were able to actually do some activities in the sessions, and then between each session, they're having homework to complete to understand the whole process. And that includes understanding the RRTs and how you work with them and how you bring the advisory councils together in each community. So this has been very successful, something that we had to do because of COVID, but in the same venue, we found that it's very successful in that we're getting around the state, enabling more staff to participate. We had 3 project areas in the beginning, so now we're trying to roll this out to entire staff in our agency. So this has been very successful. We've been meeting, as everybody says, through virtual means. We've had less travel time, which means that our schedules are more flexible. And I think everybody on this call probably understands that because we went virtually, In travel time, you don't have that many appointments in one given day because you are traveling. When you're virtual now, the calendar can be complete in 1 8-hour day with feels like 10 to 12 meetings in one day. So we had to learn how to balance virtual scheduling and effective performance, which I probably have not found myself to this point. But less travel time gave the agency less cost for vehicles on the highway. Cynthia, we also worked through a lot of rural areas and cover a lot of territory and driving windshield time in our rural areas in Virginia. We have now moved virtually in all those areas. And like everyone else, because of the bandwidth and the service delivery in all those areas for cell phones, we had to work with our clientele to figure out what was best to help them receive these services, actually helping them with some hot spots where they can actually come and receive service delivery. With our pre-employment transition services, in the beginning, the school system actually closed in terms of students in the school before school ended. We actually went to virtual services as much as we could with our project search sites. Starting up now this year, some of the lessons learned from having to kind of adapt to what we did at the end of school year, we're utilizing that now in the beginning of the school year. We do have a couple of project search sites that are going to go back into doing some internships. Lesson learned with our businesses is that we had to work with them in what they need to do in terms of not having staff, not hiring new staff, but at the same time, when they were ready to hire staff, we worked with them in one big company under our Targeted Communities project was looking for employment in one of our communities. And they were going to do customer service positions face-to-face as a hiring process. And then when COVID came, they decided they had to move that to a remote position. So because of that, it was very successful in that targeted community because our business development manager was able to open that up to our other applicants statewide, not just in that one community. But some of our other targeted community areas, we were able to recruit members for that position. So that's different in business in Virginia in that we are able to now expand the applicant pool for any businesses that need applicants but are having virtual positions because you're not having to be in that locality to receive work. So that's been a successful thing that we will continue. And in Virginia, businesses still are not that full force 100%. So we're having to look at how to help meet their needs. As I said, we had a cost savings in the agency because of travel time. We're helping businesses. One thing that we did as a result of having to move to virtual services that we developed 2 work groups that came together just recently and looked at how do we develop guidance, expectations, and best practices for remote service delivery in our agency to our internal staff and for our external stakeholders and partners. And so we focused on 3 areas: teleworking, technology availability, aptitude and appropriateness, online and video conferencing. What we learned out of that, we know were best practices thus far, was that we actually thought after we came together, we would actually offer a resource guide on best practices, look at how we offer training to our internal staff, but also think about the clientele, something that Joe said. If we have clients that need technology, how do we get them the devices? How do we make it still informed choice? We just recently did open back up some of our offices for staff, and we actually are seeing clients face-to-face as needed, trying to still do virtually services. But because of the client needs, and they can't do it by technology, if they just, you have to go with their abilities. If they're not able to comprehend through a virtual learning or a virtual interview, then we're trying to see them now by appointment only and using some of the same criteria if you go to your doctor or to your dentist, screening ahead of time. So we're actually being considerate of that, and we'll have processes in place on how to continue to work in that manner. We're looking to help staff with tips on how to use virtual platforms. We all had to learn how to do Zoom and Google Meets and work with Microsoft Teams and put up presentations. And so it's still a learning curve, but because we've been successful in that and we've saved dollars and we're still doing service delivery, we have less no-shows for client services because they're not traveling to our offices. It's just a matter of getting on the platform and actually providing services. So those things we will continue to do, John. And I think that's probably enough for this question. And I'm sure I hit on some of this in our next two questions.
Well, thank you, Dale. We have a minute or two before we move to the next question. So Cynthia or Joe, I didn't know if there's something you wanted to add.
I think that Dee did a really good job of covering the things that I had added to share. We are allowing electronic signatures. We're using DocuSign. I don't know if that's a platform or application you all are using. So we're using that, and we did that as an interim measure because of the circumstances that we're under. But I do anticipate that to the extent our federal authorities and others allow, we would want to continue to be able to utilize that mechanism when we need to, because we have found that it has created the opportunity to have some efficiencies and get signatures when we need to. We also, as I mentioned to you before, one of the things that we've been challenged by is telephone access in reaching out to our consumers. And so one of the things we're looking at now is something called Jabber. And I probably shouldn't even mention it because I don't know enough about it to talk intelligently about it. But our both the blind agency that I serve as well as the general agency are working with our IT department to make those technologies available to us to facilitate greater communication. And I expect that will go forward. But the other things that Dale mentioned or things that we also are doing and hope to be able to continue to do.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Cynthia. Joe, you have a minute if you have anything to add before we go to the next question, which is actually yours.
Yeah, just one quick thought that I think permeates what both Dale and Cynthia were describing. A driver for me as a director here in my thinking is that every single system is a vehicle of what we do, not the master of what we do. So you heard a lot of what's already been described, but I would suggest that we haven't even yet totally figured out what is possible when we stop thinking within the existing systems and start thinking outside of that. So one example that I'll share with you. You heard about electronic signatures. We too are dealing with electronic signatures, but we're changing our thinking. We're no longer thinking of electronic signatures. We're thinking of authentication of the user. Just like you do when you do online banking or online retail. It's not a signature. It's a simple methodology of authentication, which totally changes the mindset of what you're asking users to do and the tools that you need to deliver that authentication.
Thanks, Joe. I just again want to remind everybody about the opportunity to put questions or feedback in the chat room. But I'm kind of wondering too, for the audience, are things that are being said resonating with you? Are they things that you're experiencing, such as that it is presenting an opportunity to spend more time with your customers and so forth? So again, if you have feedback or questions, welcome them in the chat room. So we're going to move to question number 3. And Joe, you're the lead on this question. And when WIOA was passed in 2014, one of the provisions was recognizing that business was a customer of vocational rehabilitation in addition to individuals with disabilities. So what have you identified as the best ways to collaborate with and serve the needs of your business customers in this virtual environment?
Yeah. Thank you, John. So I would say that one of the first things that I would raise here is that we just talked a lot about how our organizations have changed, and the things that we've had to do. And I think we have to do the same thinking for our business partners. They too have changed. How they approach the work that they do, how do they look at some of the things that they're looking at, that has changed. And so we have to understand what those changes have been for them and how they're doing business for us to effectively engage with them. And then some more specific things that we've done to engage with our business partners. So we have all been doing job fairs in some fashion. Well, now we have moved into where we're doing virtual job fairs. And virtual job fairs has a lot of positive aspects to it, including the fact that, you know, some of the transportation barriers are no longer there, and some of the time that it would take to get to and from are no longer there. So that offers a lot of participation opportunity that wasn't there. And the other thing that I believe has also been very beneficial is a lot of our business partners, just like us, have moved to where virtual interviews are now possible. But virtual interviews are possible, but what we now have to be thinking about is, and what are we doing to prepare our consumers for those virtual interviews? Do you interview in a virtual setting the same way that you do in a face-to-face? And I think the answer for me to that question is no, you don't. So am I looking at the camera? I mean, for those of you who don't know, I'm blind. So one of the things for me is, am I looking at the camera? How am I positioned? What's my body posture? Do I know the technology that I am asked to use? Not the one that I'm comfortable with, but the one that my business partner is using, or the potential employer is using. The other thing that we know has been of great benefit is where we would provide training to our business partners, you know, in the face-to-face. If you had, you know, 50 people that showed up for a business training, maybe they're scattered around, you know, particular region. Well, with the virtual access, we now have much more people participating. So we're able to deliver training to a wider audience and have that kind of a greater impact in the way that we do that. So another benefit of that. The other thing that I already mentioned was the ease of participation, but it's not just the ease of participation for our business partner or the ease of participation for, you know, our consumers, but oftentimes if we're doing a forum that enables or that is appropriate to bring our other business partners to the conversation, so now they're coming and they're participating, and for me, it's one of the invaluable tools of having our partners sitting at the table when we're providing services to business, because we start to create that alignment, that seamless, that wraparound approach, just like we do with the consumer, to the business community. And of course, you know, there's great benefit and value to our business partners to see that taking place. So those are just a couple of the concepts and ideas and some of the things that we're doing here in California. So I'll give some time to my colleagues here to weigh in on that as well.
Well, thanks, Joe. So Cynthia, Dale, any additional thoughts or anything you would amplify?
I would agree. This is Dale. I would agree with Joe's comments. I think the business relationship is critical to the virtual environment, and even when we were working before COVID. I mentioned that one of our communities, we actually had a big employer that had a hiring that was going to be face-to-face, and we changed it to virtual interviewing and as a remote position, which opened up the opportunity for more customers across the Commonwealth, or applicants across the Commonwealth. One other thing for our business, you know, in Virginia, businesses and everywhere else really had a hard time at the beginning of COVID-19. And as they started to begin needing candidates again, we actually were able to offer paid internships to our customers going into businesses. But the need had to be there for the business. It wasn't so much for us getting the internship, it's what was the business need. And because like every other company having financial kind of restraints, it was an opportunity for them to get someone as an intern without really having to pay the salary until they were making sure they were qualified for the position. So we incorporated some paid internships from my agency to businesses in the IT field. And in Virginia, we really were having a hard time with healthcare workers because of the pandemic. So in some areas, we were able to offer healthcare paid internships to some of our applicants, to some of the businesses, which was great access to the companies in Virginia. We actually were able to do some of those in person, but then there were many that were remote positions. So that was a way to help the businesses in Virginia, but also to continue to help our clients become qualified for more permanent positions. That's probably the main thing that I can add to what Joe said at this point.
Thanks, Dale. Cynthia?
Thank you, Joe and Dale. I think you've covered where we are too. One of the exciting, I guess, outcomes that I'm seeing in our state because of the world in which we live right now is that it is providing an opportunity for greater partnerships where businesses are looking at partnering with us in a different way. They're looking at of how to work with us to provide remote job opportunities for individuals we serve. And I think that's exciting. And so we have some preliminary partnerships and discussion right now that I'm looking forward to. And I think by virtue of us just both businesses and public VR programs alike thinking differently and more openly, it's just creating some really nice opportunities.
Thanks, Cynthia. I appreciate that. And you had mentioned Jabber, if I got that right.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure I did, but go ahead on, John.
Okay, I'll jabber on. I just wanted to note that Eric from New Mexico mentions in the chat room that they were using DocuSign, and they've also been using Cisco Jabber this last month or so, which he feels has worked very well for them too, because it's directly connected to their office phone. So, and that really brings us to the fourth and final question. And I appreciate, Cynthia, you are so gracious to do double duty and take the lead on two questions. So this next question is, how has your agency used technology during the pandemic to effectively serve hard to reach populations to ensure employment outcomes for them? And of course, those are competitive integrated employment outcomes. So, and you've all talked about technology and things you've changed. So how are you using that, especially to work with a hard to reach populations in your states? I think you froze again, Cynthia.
From Frozen.
We can't.
It looks like
Maybe you'll ask Joe if he would take the lead on this, and we'll come back to you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Joe, do you want to?
Yeah, so I'll start the conversation. Cynthia, I'll buy you some time so you can unfreeze. So a couple things that I would point up here when we talk about technology, and we mentioned this in a couple ways, but I think it merits emphasis. One is we have to appreciate that we do have deserts out there when it comes to digital usability or to digital using technology in a digital world, such as internet access and devices and what have you. But the emphasis there is not just that we have that desert, we always talked about coordination, collaboration, and partnerships. And I think this adds another dimension to it. None of us by ourselves are going to be able to solve these deserts or solve this digital divide. And so we now have to bring to the table partners that we may not have thought of that were necessary to meet this need. So I think that's one place where I just believe we can do a much better job with technology. The other thing that I want to mention about technology is pretty simple, but yet I don't think we're giving it enough attention. So we've already identified in this afternoon's presentation, that individuals that have different skill sets and different competence in terms of how they can use technology. However, I think we also have to recognize that people will develop a skill today where they may not have yesterday. So let me tell you about a real person that this applies to. My 89-year-old mother. In December of 2019, her technology skills was microwave and pushing the buttons on the telephone. And if then you would have said, Joe, your 89-year-old mother will learn how to use an iPad to live stream mass, I would have thought you were drinking something. She's doing it. Is she the most skilled at it? No. But her skill is evolving. And I submit to you that we have a lot of people that we may not think they can, but if we support their opportunity to, they will be able to develop that skill set. And that skill set has a wide implication, not just on services received, but frankly, on the quality of life for a lot of folks. And I particularly think of our seniors these days, who can be somewhat isolated because of the pandemic and the circumstances that we're in. So just that ability to FaceTime or video chat or whatever with family can be powerful. And there's many, many other applications of technology. Again, I think our own agency, we are escalating things here that would have taken us 5, 10, 15 years, and we're doing it in weeks and in months, just because of the disruption in what we were used to and the need to really think about this in a very, very different way. So hopefully, Cynthia, I bought you enough time.
Thanks, Joe. Cynthia, I guess you're back?
Yeah, I cut off my video.
Still froze.
Yeah, I think we lost you again. We're not hearing you. So I'm going to ask Dale if she wants to jump in, and we'll circle back. I'm sorry.
Sure. I agree with Joe about the technology and how we need to look forward and moving forward with it, and how it's been a lesson learned for everyone, not only just his mother, but even myself with Zoom, setting up meetings, learning how to actually use a platform for a meeting, how to insert charts and graphs and presentations on a Zoom call or Google Meets, so it's been a training for all of us. And if it's for us in that manner, think about the clientele that we serve. So one thing that we've done and will continue to do is really identify where the client is in terms of technology, working with our targeted community partners. If they're closer to a client than we are in one geographic area, then let them try to help us get them the technology they need to get the services delivered that's needed, whether it's from their agency or our agency, but just having that collaboration and the connection to make sure that someone's connecting with the client to get the service provided. That's been a big lesson learned, and that will be something we'll continue to do. We did purchase webcams for our projects, Able Now project. We have a new project just starting up with our senior program, Joe, and others that is through Department of Labor, where we will actually look at digital divide for those seniors that are not used to technology, but really want to continue to work in this virtual world. The focus will be on how do we help them understand technology, identify what technology they can do, how the potential is to learn new technology. So totally agree with where we are right now with technology and where we should be moving and will be moving in our agency overall.
Is Cynthia unfrozen, John?
I think I am. Can you hear me now?
I think we can, yes.
Yes.
Oh, goodness. Gotta love technology.
Yeah, when it works, you love it.
Oh my gracious. Oh my gracious. So I have my video off, so hopefully that'll help. But thank you, Joe and Dale, for covering so nicely that question. I don't know that I have a lot to add after you guys did such a nice job. But one of the things that we do is we work as a team here in our division. And so that includes our independent living team, and they provide instruction just like our career and training center team does. And so what we've done for all consumers, not just independent living, but any VR consumers who need it, is we've really focused on making sure that we are training them how to utilize the technologies and build confidence in their abilities to use the technologies. And not only are we teaching them, but we're listening to what they have to say. For example, originally, I thought was that, okay, we're going to, in our career and training center, purchase Zoom Gov. We had the same situation you did, Dale, in Virginia, where our privacy and security said, no, you can't use the regular Zoom platform. You must purchase Zoom Gov for security measures. So first we had the issue of waiting for that. And then we were further focused. This is how we're going to deliver our services. Well, we also had the opportunity to use Google Meets. And we listened to our consumers because overwhelmingly for them, they found, after having experienced and been taught on both platforms, that the Google Meets platform was more user-friendly for their needs. So we're making sure we're listening. We're making sure we're adjusting what we do to meet the need, not what we think meets the need. And I think that's important to our success in providing the services and supports our consumers' needs. We're teaching, for individuals, not everybody has everything and we can't get it in their hands fast enough. So what we're doing is finding out, what do you have? You got an iPad? Okay, I'm going to teach you how to use that. And we're going to deliver the services such that you can participate in your training, in your meetings, in the job fairs, whatever it is we're trying to do with you, using what you have as we continue to provide what additional technologies you might need. And so our staff, both at the center and in the local communities through our independent living programs, are teaching individuals how to use the iPads. We talked about smartphones. We're using Microsoft Teams. So we're using all sorts of technologies, and we continue to learn every day. We continue to research every day so that we are making wise decisions about what we're purchasing. Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm overwhelmed by all the marketing folks. I see some heads nod for Joe, reaching out to us right now, wanting to sell their wares and their new best thing. And so we're taking a cautious and thoughtful approach to how we go about doing that, because our resources are limited and our needs are great, and we want to make wise decisions in that regard.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Thank you. And I do apologize again, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for sticking in there and getting back to us. And I know that's very frustrating. So thank you for persevering. And I also want to thank Christina in the chat room for her suggestions about what we can do when we freeze up. And, as we do more of these, those helpful hints are appreciated. So we've gone through the questions that we had for the panel, and we have a couple questions in the chat room. Kyle from that snowy state of Wisconsin is asking if any of your agencies have developed or implemented an app that enhances client engagement in their case, gives them the opportunity to be more involved or self-manage services. He was also asking about Sarah, if any of your agencies are using Sarah.
So, John, this is Joe. So to both questions, we have one of our districts, and we have 14 districts here in California. So one of them has been piloting the use of Sarah. You know, I think the question that we're obviously looking at there is scalability, given the size of the, you know, the agency. In terms of providing more access for the consumer to, quote, manage their own plan, we're not looking at an app per se, but what we're looking as is at portals. So in other words, it would be a web-based approach where the consumer can log in and be able to conduct transactions and engagement with their the staff that manage their caseload, and that could include from, you know, plans. It can include you know, uploading documentation, receiving, approving, so all the basic caseload transactions that you would expect. So, and we're hopeful to have that. It is under development. We're hoping to have that pushed out, its first iteration of that in the next few months, and then we'll be just building on that over time, on that functionality.
Thanks, Joe. And need to note, and I'm gonna mispronounce the name, I'm terrible at names. Araceli Holland from your staff mentioned that too in the chat room. So that's great to learn more about that. Thank you. So Dale and Cynthia, anything you're doing in your agencies that, you know, responsive to that question that you might want to share?
This is Dale. We do not have anything currently. Like Joe, we are looking at a platform that would do some case management connection through a software package that our policy office is looking at in terms of, again, confidential information being exposed up there. So we're in a discussion on it. So we have not implemented anything to date. We do our customer satisfaction surveying though on open cases. So while we don't have a platform to kind of talk about and help with engagement and case management, they are surveyed since we've been in the COVID environment. And it's a random survey, but they're able to say whether they're still being connected, are they having communication about their plans, are they being served in a timely manner. So we do have that information that we're using during this time.
Thanks. Cynthia?
Yeah, okay, so for North Carolina, we are actually right now in the process of developing our new case management system. We have been one of the state agencies who are still utilizing Libra System 7, but we are in the process of moving to a new case management system and have been intensely working on the development of that system. Once it's in place, and sadly, Joe, we're not as close as you guys are to it. It's still a year or two out, but we're excited about it because the new system will provide a client portal, but it will also have a mobile app to it. So we're getting there, and we're developing it, but we're just a little bit ways off. And the company that we're working with is Geographical Solutions Inc. out of Florida.
Thanks, Cynthia. Well, I think it was Dale, you mentioned that with a virtual world, one of the challenges sometimes is balancing scheduling, especially virtual scheduling, because it's so easy to hold a meeting and you have more time because you're not traveling, and effective performance. And so I'm sure that's a challenge for many of us, especially since we're isolated. We can't really go out. So how are your agencies working with your staff and yourselves to manage that? Any tidbits or suggestions, you know, things that work for you that might be of interest to the audience?
This is Dale. Our agency management team meet initially it was weekly with all staff, but I think they've gone to maybe every other week. And actually talking about performance management and how you're connecting with your clients, where the clients are in their rehab process, and the ability to really look at, our system. We look at performance. Are you getting plans? And surprisingly, which is great news, our performance this year with COVID and creating plans and getting people into programs, and our plans have increased more than it did last performance year. So I would say that the communication, as I said in the beginning, is the key. Really staying connected in the virtual environment. And that's through, we have meetings and we ask you to be on the webcam so we can make sure that you're actually where you need to be. In some instances, we're not a time watcher. We're just asking that, because we don't get to see each other often now, that when we can do webcam meetings, that we're able to communicate and kind of have a dialogue face to face through a virtual means. So I would say that our performance management is pretty much the same, but just in a different environment. And there are some instances where you do have performers that are not good with working from home. So as we open the offices back up, if they're asking to go back into the office because that's where they work, we're allowing them to do that.
Thanks, Neil. I don't know, Joe or Cynthia, anything you might want to add to that?
So for us here in California, we have about 75% of our staff teleworking, and we expect that to be the case post-COVID-19. So two issues that we're really grappling with. One is what I call a virtual workplace socialization. So a lot of the socialization that would otherwise occur around the water cooler, in the hallway, in the break room, whatever have you, is not happening and is not having the same effect that it otherwise was face-to-face. And we're trying to develop a range of techniques of how to engage staff in that way. Some folks are setting up virtual lunches, virtual happy hours, coffee times. So, range of efforts at how do you build that. But you still have to deal with the personal connectiveness. Cynthia and I can be on this video chat all we want, but there's nothing like sitting across a table, in a restaurant from each other and just shooting the breeze and catching up with each other that has that same impact. So the other part that we're really having to figure out is what's the right balance between virtual and face-to-face. Maybe not so much even in the current COVID-19 world, but beyond that, because we fully expect very, very large virtual and telework presence and aspect to what we do. And what's that right balance, right? Because we're social creatures. For a lot of people with disabilities, isolation is a real barrier that we have fought for so many decades to do away with. And so now we're needing to reset that scale and reset that balance. I don't know that I can say, here's the solution. What I can tell you is that if you are not thinking about it, please think about it and please start to find the strategies, find the techniques, and share those. We'll share. We just hope you will do the same because we all need to collectively learn from how do we do some of this new work, for lack of a better description.
Thanks, Joe. We have about a minute left, and just want to note in the chat room, Karen from Southern and Katie mentioned Google Voice, which is a way of communicating without revealing a personal phone number. So that might be something to keep in mind. So as I say, the session's scheduled till 4:10, about a minute from now. I certainly want to thank our panelists, Cynthia, Dale, and Joe. I hope everyone who's been listening got some good ideas or things that you're doing were affirmed. So we appreciate all the work that you're doing and appreciate your time in joining us today. And I don't know how we do virtual claps for the panel, but certainly want to thank the panel for all their time and information. Really appreciate it. So do I turn it back to you, Robin, or?
Yes, thank you, thank you. It's been a great panel discussion. I've written 3 pages of notes from the information you've shared. So thank you, John, for facilitating, Joe, Dale, and Cynthia for presenting great information that you've shared with us today. We really appreciate you. Thank you. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint and share that information. So where we are right now, we are at a break. So we have our next presenter who is on, Heidi Scher from the University of Arkansas. And she is going to be sharing a panel or a discussion on habit forming for sustainable accessibility. So we're going to give you a few minutes to take a break, and we'll get started right back up at 3:20. While you're taking that break, I will share that tomorrow we're going to be focusing on communication. We'll be sharing information from Dr. Sasson at Langston University. He's going to be sharing communicating with cultural competency, and then Ashley Johnson Cross will be sharing communicating effectively within your organization, especially when you have big ideas and you want to have change happen. How do you make that happen? And then on Thursday, we have a great day of sharing regarding social media and how to be more productive and using social media to reach our target population. So Rick Sizemore and Betsy Civilette from Virginia will share developing the spark that ignites your social media connections with clients, community, and business. And then John Walsh will facilitate our discussion on sustainability. And with that discussion, we're going to get to view about 7 videos that have been presented from Louisiana, Kentucky, and Oregon, Virginia, New Jersey, New Mexico, California, and North Carolina, who've all produced videos that share what their big takeaways and successes have been in their targeted communities and their priorities and what they plan on continuing and what their plans are in regards to that sustainability efforts. So again, thank you for today's panel discussion, and we're going to take a few more minutes for our break, and we'll continue here in a minute with this continued discussion on virtual and ensuring that our work is accessible for people with disabilities.